Hey everyone! Today's going to be a little different in that I'm doing some digital studies and I'm using a new program to boot, so wish me luck. The previous digital studies, which I will link down below, were done on the program Sci, which I've used for years. It's a fine program. It does what it can, and that's about it. Well, I saw that Clip Studio Paint was on sale for $25, and I figured if I'm going to try and get better at digital art, I should try learning a new program. I've been kind of stuck with my digital skills, and I think one of the best ways to combat that is to learn a new set of tools and work from scratch. Really make myself use my brain, because I don't usually. Another reason this is different though is because Clip Studio enables recorded time lapses, so it records your entire process and condenses it into a short video, which Sci can't do. I had to record in OBS, and it was sort of cumbersome because it slowed my computer quite a bit and added lag that made using the program just frustrating. The only thing with these time lapses, though, is that it means you don't see what tools I'm using or switching to. You don't see how I have my windows set up or anything like that. So for this first study, I did record in OBS and in CSP, and that's what you're seeing now is the OBS recording. But I'm going to switch over to the time-lapse simply because speeding up the OBS recording is harder to render on my computer, and I think I can say all I need to say within the time-lapse. As with the first set of digital studies, these are in Greyscale. The first two I did were human studies, focusing mainly on skin and blending the skin and rendering the facial features. With these studies, I focus on the blending and texture and feathers of animals. Specifically a goat, which is not feathered, understandable. But the next one is a swan, which does have feathers. But we're not there yet. We'll get there, eventually. And the reason I'm starting with Greyscale for these studies is because it helps me focus on value and lighting without having to worry about tone or hue. Basically, lighting can make a color appear to be very different depending on what it's around. And it can make or break art if you don't understand lighting properly, so I'm taking color out of the problem entirely and working on solidifying my understanding of how light and shadow change the shape and accentuate the texture of the fur or hair or feathers or whatever it is I'm painting. Skin was different because, for the most part, skin is pretty smooth and I could just use Sci's basic blurring tool and get away with it. Can't do that with a goat. Or CSP because they have several different blending tools, which I was happy to find out about, despite the fact that I'm still not entirely certain about how each of them work. But I'll figure it out. Maybe. Possibly. Or I'll never touch them again. Who knows? For the most part, this was done with just one of the preset watercolor brushes that felt similar to the watercolor brush setting I had on Sci. This tool had way better textures though. Aside from that, I pretty much approached this the same way I approached the skin studies. I would lay down the strongest lights and shadows, then start gradually adding in different, different values, then blend them out, then add in more tones to make up for the loss of detail that the blending caused, and I did that over and over, using brush strokes in the same direction as the fur, until I felt I had the best composition in the lighting that I could get before going in with a different textured brush. I think I chose their mechanical pencil setting, or the aptly named textured pencil, that sounds about right. Either way, I used that to etch in further details, blend them a tiny bit less than I was blending before, and then add in a few more. Overall, a very redundant process that definitely takes longer to do with fur than it does with smooth skin. Who knew? If anyone knows a better way to do this, please tell me. Anything to streamline this process would be a godsend. The horns were pretty much done in the same fashion, just with more meticulous brush strokes. Had they been smooth horns, I would have used a different brush without texture, but I found that the same watercolor brush I'd been using actually worked pretty well as the horn texture. I have to say though, my favorite part of this study was doing the ears. I like the black and very slight, subtle shading creating the shape for me without me having to actually draw it out. On the other hand, the eyes, which had a similar technique, were probably my least favorite. They were just so easy to mess up, and probably because they were really small, and zooming in on this program is really difficult for me. I haven't set up hotkeys yet, and I'm lazy, so I might never do it. But that's how this first study came out. I'm pretty proud of it overall, though I definitely could have shaped the head a bit better. With this one done though, let's move on to the next one. So I had absolutely zero confidence in this one. Skin? Easy. Smooth. Fur? Still pretty easy. Generally follows a simple path. But feathers? Feathers? It's not just the texture, it's the specific shapes of the feathers and the veins or whatever's in them, and the fact that all those shapes and veins or whatever's are overlapping each other and showing different patterns and textures and details, and they can go so wrong so quickly. Did I even finish my sentence? I don't know. Do you understand what I'm getting at? I hope so. And they have weird heads, so yeah. I wasn't exactly certain I was going to come out of this without snapping my drawing tablet in two. I almost did at the start because my pressure sensitivity was gone and my pen wouldn't make marks unless it was a longer stroke and it wasn't blending like it usually did. I restarted the program, my tablet, I updated my tablet's drivers, then I had to update my PC, and now it works just fine. And there was no snapped tablet, thankfully, because I can't afford another tablet right now. Anyway, enough about that. Swan. Right, swans. Specifically, this swan. The first thing I did was roughly sketch out the outline and then made the brush really, really big and plop down all the tones. Except for that beak, because for some reason, when I picked the reference, I didn't see the glaringly red-orange beak sitting on the swan's face. You know, a beak. What swans have, generally. I'm not smart. Maybe I was tired, who knows. Let's just ignore the fact that swans have beaks for the next few minutes, alright? So, the neck and head were actually kinda easy to render. They were shorter strokes that looked more like fur because they don't really have full feathers like all over their body. Their down or whatever covers what isn't filled with feathers, so this part was a nice place to start after having done the previous study, you know? The rest of the body, however, was not as nice to me, especially the right side by the wing. The reference photo is so strongly lit that you can't really tell where the wings end and where the body begins, or vice versa, so I just sorta had to trust the lighting. There's no point in over-detailing if the lighting doesn't show it there, so I had to trust that in the end it would look alright. That being said, I still played around with those feathery ends, and I went over that back area again and again and again, just trying to get it to look like layered feathers, and I attribute part of this to me being lazy and not wanting to put in the proper timely effort to get it right the first time. But I could say that about any and every piece of work that I do. I'm just an impatient artist. Makes watercolors infuriating. And yet I own a bunch of those because I like the torture, apparently. But that's neither here nor there. The feathers at the end of the wings and at the back were actually pretty simple and relaxing. I could be pretty loose with it, and they were easy to fix when I messed up, so I may or may not have spent a fair amount of time there because I didn't want to flesh out the head. Flesh out? Feather out? Not quite the same. I do eventually tell myself that I have to paint the beak though, and I kind of half-assed it, but it was one of those things where I think that was the best way to deal with it. Since I'm using this watercolor brush, the color needs to be built up to be properly saturated, which made painting it fairly simple anyway. It was just a matter of making sure it was in the best shape, so I just eyeballed the right color and did that. The head, I think, changes the most throughout this time lapse. The shading of the head, that is. The reference photo was really detailed there, and I was trying to strike a balance between the lighting and the little downy details, all while doing this on one single layer, so yeah. It was probably not the best way to go about it, and I'm totally open to suggestions on how to improve my workflow otherwise. I probably should have mentioned this for the first study, but I did that one all in one layer also. Technically two, because I just made the background layer black to match the references backdrops, but the painting part was all on one layer. Which is new for me because I'm someone who needs at least 72,391 layers, all properly labeled. I've been trying to stop doing that because even when they are properly named and organized, I still somehow end up coloring on the wrong one and don't realize it until it's far too late to even think about fixing it. It's the greatest feeling in the world, really. I'm rambling a lot in this video, but I think for this kind of video, it's okay to ramble because otherwise it'd be pretty boring. I just hope this was at least, like, a little bit enjoyable. I don't want to do a bunch of these if they're not enjoyable for anyone, although I have a few ideas on how to change it up, but they're not ready yet. So you won't see them here, but soon. Maybe. Okay, so these are the 2 studies I did and my thoughts and process. I want to play around a bit more with CSP and do more studies and improve, but I'm definitely going to space them out so that my videos aren't just all speed paints. Like it's 2013 again. Was that when they were popular? I don't remember. Either way, I generally do more traditional artwork on this channel, so if you want to see my other work, you can check out my other videos and maybe subscribe if you're entertained or curious. Maybe. I think I'm going to shift my schedule to only posting once a week from now on. Twice a week is just a bit much for me right now, and I would prefer my upload dates be on Friday, but it's going to take me a little while to adjust, so be sure to subscribe and have notifications on so that you don't miss a video. Let me know if you enjoyed the video with a like or a comment, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!